Hello people, I'm Thomas, and you might be saying to yourself right now, is that the famous Game Boy Advanced video game, Yoshi's Topsy-Turvy? And to that, I bite my thumb at thee, as that is actually the famous Game Boy Advanced video game, Yoshi's Universal Gravitation. Not that you would know anything about that.
A title, the ultimate unification of consonants, vowels, and if you're feeling a little dirty, you can sprinkle in a number or two in there as well. In the world of video games, a clever title can really impact how a game sells and is remembered in the long run. Imagine a world in which Donkey Kong Country 2 was released without the sublime subtitle that is Diddy's Conquest. But not all titles stay the same everywhere. For one reason or another, a title to a game is changed depending on the region. Today, we'll look at video games whose titles have changed, and if that change was necessary and benefited it in the long run. Localization is the most common reason for a game's title to be changed, making a title that sounds more familiar to a foreign audience to help the game sell. Bomberman, for example, was a series that had different names. In Europe, the series was known as Dynablaster, while North America can't have cute happy things, so went with a much more intimidating name of Atomic Punk. Now, these names didn't last, as now everywhere refers to the series as simply Bomberman, but there are just some titles that will never see the light of day in other parts of the world. Bionic Commando was a simple action platformer for the NES, and in Europe and North America, that's what we knew it as. Japan, on the other hand, said, "F*** it, Hitler's Resurrection, top secret." Like, he's in the sky, this isn't top secret. Due to cultural reasons, in many countries, titles needed to be reworked in order to not upset the local population. Japan was fine with Hitler's Resurrection, but they draw the line at the deplorable words such as blood. Castlevania Bloodlines had its name changed to Castlevania Vampire Killer, while Europe went with the title Castlevania The New Generation. Remember kids, it's okay to show blood as long as you don't say it's blood. The Kirby games have a surprising amount of title differences. Examples include North America having both Kirby Canvas Curse and Kirby and the Rainbow Curse. But Europe will not touch the foul language of the word curse, so they got Kirby Power Paintbrush and Kirby and the Rainbow Paintbrush. While other cultural changes make more sense, like the Mario Strikers games being called the Mario Football series in Europe. And one of the most famous examples of a title change was with the Pokemon series. Originally called Pocket Monsters in Japan, many speculate the title change was due to copyright or something, but clearly the change was due to how many dick jokes can come from the title Pocket Monsters, and so that's how we got Pokemon. Puzzle games always had it rough with titles and localization. Panel de Ponat's name changed to Tetris Attack before being changed to Puzzle League. Puzzle Bobble was given the way more tubular name of Bust-A-Move. And Puyo Puyo. This series had a rocky life outside of Japan. Nintendo turned it into Kirby's Avalanche, Sega turned it into Dr. Robotnik's Mean Bean Machine, even Disney took Puyo Puyo and gave it a Lion King theme to it. Years later, the series would return to the West under the name Puyo Pop, before being rebranded back to Puyo Puyo. However, if you have a North American Sega Game Gear and pop in a copy of the Japanese cartridge of Puyo Puyo, you'll get to play Puzlow Kids. Okay, what the f*** is a Puzlow Kids? Is that a Puzlow? Clearly not, because the game says they're Puyos, and are you the fabled Puzlow Kid? No, that's Aural. This title raises more questions than answers. Imagine if this game was localized and on Christmas Day you open your present and you see you got Puzlow Kids. Gee Santa, I would have just taken the coal at this point because I must have committed some crime against humanity to deserve Puzlow Kids. But now, it's time to end this with one of the most classic examples of a publisher changing a video game series' title. Japan would release the first Final Fantasy game in 1987 on the Famicom, with said game getting released in North America 3 years later on the NES. During those 3 years, Square had already finished developing the Famicom games of Final Fantasy II and Final Fantasy III. By this point, the SNES was already out in North America, so the next game we'd get is Final Fantasy IV, titled Final Fantasy II. Final Fantasy V would then skip out on getting released in North America, and so Final Fantasy VI was our Final Fantasy III. While this was going on, Square was making Final Fantasy Adventure on the Game Boy, where the title was changed to Mystic Quest in Europe. However, Square would then go on to make a Final Fantasy game called Mystic Quest, and Europe changed the title to Mystic Quest Legends. Jumping over to the PlayStation, Final Fantasy VII would be released, where it was called Final Fantasy VII in North America. At face value, it would seem we never got Final Fantasy IV, 5, and 6, but in reality, we never got Final Fantasy 2, 3, and 5. And at this point, Square would start labeling their games correctly in order to fix the mess in the West, with Final Fantasy II being released worldwide on the PlayStation 1. No, not that Final Fantasy II, this Final Fantasy II. Eventually, we would get the original Final Fantasy III and Final Fantasy V released worldwide, and the age of title chaos would come to an end.
Examining the factors as to why forms of media changed their titles was quite the interesting venture, but I can't get my high-class peers to play games with such simpleton titles. You peasants may know the game as Puyo Puyo, but to high-class individuals such as myself, we know the game as John D. Rockefeller's Pauper Baron Frenzy. Only the best for the most astute.